Hello, hello, and welcome. And to some of you, welcome back. I am Rachel Wilson Thibodeau, host of Project Get Out Your Own Way. For those of you who are new or perhaps hearing us for the first time or seeing us for the first time, I am an award winning speaker, brand and marketing strategist, and of course, again, host of this podcast. And I also run a consultancy called Swag Strategy Solutions, where swag is not just cool, although, guys, it is kind of cool. You have to admit, it's kind of cool, but it's also an acronym that stands for Strategic Women Achieve Growth. We specialize in increasing thought leadership and breakthrough brand awareness, as in breaking through all the noise and distraction of the marketplace, especially online. And we mostly work with first generation as well as women business owners and reluctant content creators. Yes, I said reluctant because some of you are reluctantly or have reluctantly become content creators. So joining me today, I am really excited to have Sienna Roman. Hello, Sienna.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. And so Sienna is the founder and CEO of Mozaic Collective, which is a creative and branding design firm. And you're going to hear, of course, more from her. She is also an award-winning designer, and she is passionate about creating bespoke and compelling design experiences. And that's actually where the title of this episode comes from, creating a bespoke brand in a digital world. So, Sienna, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be on this podcast and having another conversation with someone who understands the importance of branding, which is always
Yeah,
so refreshing.
because Sienna and I connected on
Oh.
LinkedIn and we've had a few exchanges in the past. And yeah, we're on the same page about some things regarding branding, brand design, brand strategy, all that good stuff. So we're going to get into that. So the first question I have for you, Sienna, is you have the triple threat of
Yes.
creative services. That's on your LinkedIn profile. I saw that in a couple of other places, and I think that's really interesting and kind of creative, kind
Thank
of pun intended. So tell us more about what exactly is the triple threat of creative services.
Oh my gosh, it's funny you asked this now because we're actually in the process of rebranding. We just,
Okay.
yeah, we're gonna, the triple threat of creative services is not going anywhere. It's just gonna mean something a little different. So when it
Cool.
started, or when the tagline started, I basically came from a place of seeing a need for entrepreneurs, small business owners, and just small to medium sized businesses trying to hire reliable creative talent and
Mm.
doing so on sources that weren't reliable. And so
Oh, okay.
when it came to positioning Mosaic Collective, I really wanted to claim a space where we are a reliable creative studio. So not only are we reliable in project management and the system and the process, but also in the product. When you hire freelance blindly, sometimes it's what you have to do. You don't know, if you don't have the creative direction background, if it is going to work for you. In many cases, many
Mm.
types of creatives take direction from you as a client, and that's not using your skills to the best of your strengths or abilities, and that's also using their skills to the best of their strengths. So when
Okay.
it came to Mosaic, I really wanted something that wasn't crazy expensive like a big agency. I wanted something that was reliable, and I wanted something that also was really effective. And so basically, the triple threat of creative services came from a position of producing uncompromised work and product and process for my target audience. And quite frankly, I think it's been really refreshing for a lot of people just to know that any work we do produce is done in a way with confidence that they can rely on for years to come for their business and use for results. So that's the background behind that tagline.
Okay. Okay. All right. Got it. So, keeping on kind of along the lines of the whole bespoke experience, what is your process or framework, if you will? How do you go about
Mm,
creating a bespoke experience? Because that really means like customize, custom
totally.
fit. So,
Yes.
what does that look like?
Yes. I'm so glad you asked this too. So before I answer, something you're going to see all over in my website, on my LinkedIn profile, and probably in this conversation is I'm going to use the word collaboration a lot. And that is the
I like
reason,
that. I like that word.
thank you. And that's the reason for using the word bespoke. So backtracking. So when I approach my work with my clients, I do so with a humble heart posture, knowing that no one does them better than them. So they know their business better than I know their business. They know their industry better than their industry. And so,
Mhm,
as a brand
mhm,
professional, I need to come at our collaboration humbly, hearing them
mm.
out, understanding their background and their industry so that I can do my best work in when it comes to the branding decisions. So, with that, we approach our collaboration just as you would any relationship. And that starts off with a nice long conversation between me and them or whoever's involved in their branding decisions. So, we usually do like a 90-minute kickoff. And I just try to make it a nice, comfortable, transparent, vulnerable, and honest conversation that starts off with like the beginnings, like childhood,
Yeah.
upbringing, any information that I can learn that gives me more insight onto their core values and where they came from. So that 90-minute kickoff serves as just a really good foundation for the rest of our work together. And I know that 90 minutes is often a lot to ask of high achieving solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, business owners. But when you do the work from the beginning, it really
Mhm.
sets you up for a productive, streamlined, and just transparent and honest relationship with your clients moving forward. Um, so that's generally how I start my process, and every branding professional is going to start it differently. I just come from more of the approach of like, let me get to know you, let you go off on your tangents. I want to hear it
Yeah.
all. I want to hear it all messy and not tied up with like a perfect bow. So I can see your personality come through and really understand the authentic you or authentic aspects of your brand.
I really like that, and I really like the way you put it, as it being one, a collaboration, and then
Mhm.
a humble collaboration, a humble heart posture. I really like that because I I have seen this all the time, and I've kind of been on both sides. I mean, I've experienced this as a client, and I've experienced as a service provider or business owner,
Yeah.
where the client is not always heard. And if you're not intentional about that as a service provider, that can happen again. I mean, you can, sometimes we get so caught up in our process and what we do and
Yeah.
how we have assessed someone sometimes, based on assumptions or what have you. So I think listening and having a conversation like that, and as you put it, messy, doesn't have to be
Mhm.
perfect. You hear them out, you hear what they're going through, their pain points, et cetera, et cetera, and it really does make a difference going forward.
Oh, a ton. Yeah, like the messiness is also such a beautiful part of it all too, because as I mentioned, like everyone listening to this podcast and watching this video, and my clients, they're all high achieving people. So we don't spend 90 minutes of our week just doing self reflection and understanding all of the patterns and connections
Right.
behind our upbringing and how it comes through in our personality. So having that time is just so beneficial for them too, so that they can start to like think about, who am I? Like how is this coming across to the world? How do I want to be seen?
Mhm.
And start to make those connections for their own branding decisions. And it's really, really fun work. And it's like such an honor to get to know people on this level. So I do really love it. But it also helps unveil the authentic personality. So
Mhm.
something there are other
Which is
designers who
very important.
completely. This brings the word bespoken as well. Other designers may have opinions. and that's fine. My personal opinion is if I was ever told, I love your style, it'd be like the biggest insult for me. Because if I have a style, that means I'm invoking my own personal style on my clients. And as a
Mm,
branding professional, I need to be a mirror of them. So I should just, my hands and my
mm,
brain should reflect whatever they have in their brain. And then I reflect it visually through the visual and strategic creative decisions. And so that brings out bespoke design because everyone is wonderfully different and unique. And when you can
mhm,
approach the collaboration with humble heart posture, you're able to see that for all the glory
right.
rather than push like, I really want a sleek design on this client, or I really want to show this, I want to use this color. It's like we can't go into collaboration with that mindset. Just might not be what's
Right.
best for their goals.
Right. So have you ever encountered, I mean, going in the way you do and with the humble heart posture and being very open and willing to listen and all that good stuff. Have you ever encountered resistance to that? I mean, have you ever had a client that kind of pushed back for whatever reason?
So I had I may not say there was two clients out that come to mind. One was a former fighter pilot and now an astronaut, and
Mm.
he was very uncomfortable doing the self-reflection work.
Oh
Not
boy.
uncomfortable; it's just not something that like came naturally. Like it's just not something you have these like mushy,
Hmm.
feelings conversations with people, especially
I
in
suppose
something
as a
like
fighter pilot, you may not be able, you may not
that. I
have the
know.
time to do much self-reflection.
I know, so funny. So in the moments, like you could tell, like when people's faces are like, "Why are you asking me about my childhood? Like, how does this relate?"
Mhm.
And I had another recent client, and she had like a similar response. And her background, she's the first Asian woman to hike the Grand Slam, like all the seven peaks in the North and
Oh
South
boy.
Poles,
Okay.
and coming from like a Chinese culture tapping into your feelings is not as doesn't come as naturally for her, and that's something,
Mhm.
her words, not mine. And so we were
Mhm.
having these like deep conversations. She's like, I have no idea how this is going to relate, but I will trust you. We'll see it down the
Mm.
road. And
Mhm.
doing that work really helped open her up to the process and understanding, like, let's talk about why humanity is so important in your brand, and realizing that that personal connection isn't as something that was that she realized at an early age and something she discovered later in life. And now she's trying to bring that to more people. So it's amazing the connections that all kind of come together. But
Yeah.
resistancy, it's definitely like uncomfortable at first because people don't know me. But hopefully after the like 30-minute call, the first 30 minutes, people usually open up
They
and
kind of relax
yeah, they
some.
do. Yeah, it's fun.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So that also makes me think about, I mean, since of course this podcast is about getting in your own way,
Mhm.
and you're kind of touching on it a bit, but I'd like to hear more about, some examples of clients you've worked with, or maybe even non-clients. I mean, maybe it didn't get to the point of being a client.
Oh yeah.
What are some of the mistakes you see with business owners, entrepreneurs, experts, people you work with? What kind of mistakes do you see them making? How do they tend to get in their own way?
So I come at this answer like with a very like understanding attitude as being an entrepreneur myself. We have an endless list of to-dos, right? Just keeps going. And you
Oh
need to
yeah.
analyze your to-dos in a way where you're like, all right, where can I compromise on these decisions that won't have profound impact on my business? How do I get to my
Hmm.
next milestone so that I can build to my next milestone and meet my ultimate long-term goal? And so while I see entrepreneurs compromising on their branding, I don't necessarily like, I can't criticize them as like, oh, you're making a big mistake. Because I understand from their perspective, it's like, oh, I can pick out a color, I can pick out a font myself, I can save
Yeah.
money here, I can save time investment here. And the brand process is so beneficial for your business and also your future decisions. And I'm sure this is something that you've talked about before on the podcast, but like branding, I think it's often misconceived by being just colors and fonts and making things look pretty.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, am I preaching right now? Um,
Yeah.
But below all of those aesthetic decisions is core values, mission, vision for your business, goals. The colors and fonts are just a reflection of what's under the surface. And so those decisions need to be so aligned with what you have at the foundation. And so I have heard things I hear from people is like, I didn't want to hire a branding professional. I just need you to do my website. And it's like, okay, well, you're going to invest the
Oh
time and
no.
resources into your website without doing the foundational work for your brand. You're going to have to redo it
Yeah.
anymore because you're going to start getting clarity around what the branding process gives you.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've done branding for agency owners, designers, creative executives. People are more than capable of designing
Sure.
brands, but they know it's really hard to see your reflection without that mirror pointing back at you. Like we walk around with our face and we don't see our face unless we have something to reflect it. And so the mistake of not investing in someone to help show your reflection can lead to a couple of things. One, I think is the biggest one, is confidence, lack of confidence. And so especially when it comes to like keynote speakers or people who have a solopreneur brand, you're going to make decisions based on feeling and not purpose. And so your feeling
Ooh.
can waver from day to day. You might feel like, oh, I want to be bold today. I want to wear red,
Mm-hmm.
or I want to be more comfortable today. I'm just going to do a graphic tee. And so what that does is creates incongruency with your brand and how people see you from the outside.
Right.
When your brand decisions are rooted in purpose, you say, I wear red because my brand values are bold and I want to be seen as provocative because my subject matter is provocative. I've had other
Mm-hmm.
people who are like, I really want to wear a leather jacket on stage. I just don't have the confidence for it. We're like, well, let's talk about where that feeling comes from. Why do you want to wear a leather jacket? And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, well, I'm in the cannabis industry and I have to, convince sales professionals or corporate America to
Mm-hmm.
embrace this as a realistic industry to consider, or not a
Mm-hmm.
realistic, sophisticated industry to consider. So that's very provocative. Okay, that makes sense. Wear your leather jacket on stage and be more confident because it's rooted in purpose rather than just like, I feel edgy today.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so long story
That is
short,
major.
yeah.
That's pretty that's pretty major because you're right. Feelings definitely are fleeting. I
Mm-hmm.
said that before, but just to hear it explained in that way, I think is really um, powerful because I don't think a lot of people think about it in that way and really realize the importance of getting really clear about what your brand is before you get into the branding and the design aspect. It's
Yes.
like you have to nail down what is your brand message? What do you want to be known for? What
Mm-hmm.
do you want? How do you want people to feel? You know that these are important questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think we just hired a branding professional to help us with our brand. Not that we're not capable of doing it. I've done these a bunch of times for a lot of
Hmm.
people, but it's really hard to do yourself. Um,
Yeah.
the best analogy I was thinking about this is like a brand, and this may be overused, but I think the brand is similar to like a foundation of a house or a building. When you're starting your business, you can't build your dream house, but you can start with something.
Hmm.
And if you have a strong foundation to build on, you can maybe paint the walls yourself or maybe buy furniture that is like used from like Facebook Marketplace or something. And when you
Right.
have hit that milestone, then maybe you expand the house and then maybe you hire someone to get, nicer window fixtures or whatever. But at the end of the day, you're building on something that's strong and that's not changing.
Hmm.
Generally, your core values and your purpose and your mission is relatively unchanging. And that's where you build
Right.
those aesthetic decisions from. The
Right.
aesthetics could change. Like maybe the color just doesn't resonate in 5 years and you need a refresh. That's fine. But the value it's rooted from is stable and strong. And so that's why I think like if you're deciding between hiring a web designer and a brand designer, while I am obsessed with designing websites, if you have to
Hmm.
choose between the one, you can get away with a templated site with a bespoke brand. And then you eventually
Hmm.
tackle the website when the resources become available. But doing that brand work, you're going to save so much time of doubting yourself.
Right.
and lead with confidence in your decisions.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the analogy with the house and having, a foundation that is really true because as you said, the message, the values, I mean the things that are really, really important, that's not going to change.
Yeah.
It's again, feelings, what you may want may vary from week to week or month to month.
Yep.
But once you are really clear on the mission, the purpose, who you want to reach, why you want to reach them, I mean, that is the foundation. And I mean, that's mostly what we do, and what we do with clients is really helping them to get clear about, as I often say, and you and I kind of had this conversation, I believe there's actually a difference between the brand
Mhm.
and branding. And
Yes.
I know those terms are used interchangeably, and
Mhm.
some people will hear that and they're like, what? I mean, isn't that the no, I mean, even by definition, like
Mhm.
I challenge you guys, look up brand and look up branding. They're
Yes.
not the same thing.
Yep.
So it is really important to get solid and nail down the brand before you get into the whole branding process. And as
Yep.
Sienna pointed out, it makes the branding process a lot easier. And I am
Yeah.
a witness to that because I experienced that as a new business owner. I mean, 9.5, 10 years ago, when I just thought I had to get my website up. Like that was
Mhm.
the most important thing. I needed to have a website. I needed to have a certain type of website. And I actually convinced myself, Sienna, that I could build my own website.
Yeah.
And so I spent months trying to
Yeah.
do that
Mhm.
before finally turning it over to a web designer. And even then, at that point, that process took longer than it
Yeah.
really should have because
Mhm.
I still wasn't completely clear
Yeah.
on the brand.
Oh my gosh. And that's what I find, like, the people come to me after horror stories. It's like I can't blame sometimes the designer, because if they don't have a clear direction to work off of, it's going to be really hard to please your client. And so
Hmm.
I just had a client, actually, and we've been doing a lot of work for it. It's taken months to get to the end of the copywriting phase. And that's because she chose not to do the branding work with me. So what she did
Yeah.
just last week, she's like, hey, I think I'm going to go back to do the branding work again. I'm like, let's do that. And so once we get the branding work
Good.
done, we're going to fly through the rest of those creative decisions, because as a designer, like, I need the work that you do, Rachel. Like, I need this discovery work, and I need, yeah, all of those decisions to do my best work for my clients. So it's like a
Yeah.
symbiotic process.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So this whole digital aspect or digital space, how would you say? I mean, I know what I see in what I do, and of course, we really focus a lot on leveraging digital strategies. As a designer, how do you see the digital space, whether it's social media, AI, which has just exploded? How do you see design being impacted by
Mm.
the digital space?
So the way I see it is, I don't know if this is unpopular to say, but similar to
Oh,
how I
that's
see,
okay. We're fine with unpopular.
okay. The way I see AI is similar to how I'm seeing like bachelor degrees. Everyone, or so much more, sorry, everyone. A lot more people are going to college right now.
Mhm.
When 50, 60 years ago, having a bachelor degree was something that was super valuable, because so
Mhm.
many more people are going to college. You're getting a lot more people getting their masters and higher degrees after that.
Mhm.
And so what I see with AI is it's going to make good design so much more accessible, and that's going to become the expectation. So
Mhm.
there will be no room for any digital presence that isn't at least acceptable. I think before, you can get away with a website that was, not updated for 10 years, and at least it had some information that was
Oh
updated, or
boy.
it's something that was useful. But the
Mhm.
overall look, especially as we have more millennials and Gen Zs making decisions for companies, they're going to be putting a lot of credence on the overall site experience because that is going to become the baseline. So AI is going to be really helpful for entrepreneurs who need a template site up fast for their short-term goals. And I think it's a great resource for people. It saves you a lot of time. If you have a brand, a bespoke brand decisions that are authentic to who you are and make you different from everyone else, great
Right.
tool to use to get that first milestone up and start having some sort of stream of income coming in. But also know that everyone's going to be doing the same thing. And so it's going to come a place where you have to stand out from the crowd, and you're going to need a human touch in there at some point. Maybe not for every business, but for a lot of brands, it's going to be the case. And so I think when it comes to branding professionals, simultaneously, they need to step up their game to show their worth and show their value. No more will we need hands to design things to look pretty. We're going to need strategy and design, not just artistry and skill, if that makes any sense. It's a lot deeper than that.
Right. Right. I agree. I agree. And it's interesting because it sounds like you are of the belief, and I mean, I am too, although I see and hear something different almost every other day or so about how AI is taking over everything and it's going to replace, a lot of creatives. It's going to
Mhm.
replace web designers. It's
Yeah.
going to replace graphic designers,
Mhm.
blah, blah, blah. But it sounds like you are of the belief that AI can coexist
Totally.
with humans, with actual expertise, human expertise. And I believe that as well, because I think there's always going to be a place and space for the human aspect, or the human touch, as you put it. But it's interesting when you see so many AI tools and they
Mhm.
are getting more and more
Mhm.
robust. I mean, are there any tools that you use in your business or to help you?
Honestly, no, but that would be really because one of my brand values is bespoke, custom, like all of
Hmm.
those words. It would be a strong contradiction if I'm like, by the way, we did this all with AI. So
Right.
I like the human touch in our work, and I think there's so much value in it. And I agree with you. I think it is going to replace a lot of creatives, but I don't necessarily think it's going to replace creatives who use their brain. So you'll
Mm.
hear me say a lot like, people don't hire me for my hands, they hire me for my head. And so
Hmm.
all of the creative strategy that goes into the decisions is so important. And while AI can definitely do that now, at least at a foundational level, to make something look pretty and be effective in the sense of having a website that works technically,
Hmm.
it I don't know how far advanced we are at this point to be doing the deep collaborative work that we do with our
Yeah.
clients.
Okay. Okay. I am curious about something I will say, and I've asked other designers this, and especially graphic
Mhm.
designers, because I am a huge fan of Canva, and I
Yeah.
know I am not alone.
Yeah.
Canva, that is another resource or tool that has absolutely exploded over the last 5+ years or so. And I always like to hear from designers, what do you think of Canva?
I think it's
Because
great.
I mean, so many people are using Canva for design,
Mhm.
and it's kind of the same conversation. Is it a threat? And again, I agree with you, at least for the most part, that really good designers who are focused on strategy and who are, leveraging their head, as you say. I think there's always going to be a need for them. Um, but I mean, Canva is still really, really cool.
Canva's great. No, I think Canva's great. Yeah, so like a lot of the people I do brand work with, for instance, like people who are not at the stage to do the web design work with me, and we just do the brand work. They'll take I can like send 10 clients who have done all their graphics on Canva. And with this,
Mhm.
going back to the brand conversation, they have that strong custom bespoke brand that then they take to Canva and they build something that looks so unique. Maybe they use the templates that Canva provides. That's fine. It saves you hours and hours and maybe dollars of,
Yeah.
spending it on a, simple graphic designer who can just like pump out these social templates, but sometimes you could just
Mm-hmm.
do it yourself. And I think it goes back to being a small business owner of like, where do you need your time? Do you have the time to do the Canva graphics? If you do, great, use the time. You have the bespoke brand. It's going to look great as long as you stay within the guidelines of the brand.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the time, then you hire a designer and you put your time to something that is a higher, um, what's the word? Higher like benefit of spending the hour or so that you would have otherwise spent Canva. Maybe put that into sales emails or, reaching out and networking and working on whatever it might be. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That and it brings something else up. As you were talking, I suppose more and more people, businesses, etc., that use something like Canva, after a while, at least some of those designs, some of the content created through that is not necessarily unique
Yeah.
because more people are using it.
Yeah. Right. Which kind of brings me back to the other point of the bar is being raised with how
Hmm.
brands are looking. It's like there are 12-year-olds on TikTok who have brands, and then there are people who've been in
Yeah.
the industry for decades who still don't have a brand. So it's like the bar is just being raised and you have to learn how to stand out from the crowd. And I think that is done really well at the most foundational level with having a unique brand that represents your personality or your business personality. But whether you have the time to do it on Canva or whether you hire a graphic designer, either way, it should just be a reflection. Oh, I also will say this. Whatever you produce, content wise, I always say it needs to be a congruent reflection of the professionalism that you promote yourself with when it comes to your businesses. So
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with a lot of keynote speakers, and so you'll have keynote speakers who are just starting, and they have the capacity to do their own Canva graphics. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're not a designer, and as you start increasing your rate to the 10K, 15, 20K mark, you're
Mm-hmm.
competing with a lot of other speakers who are in that same range. And you need to have congruent or reflection of your business from a digital
Right.
perspective that's in line with everyone else in that caliber as well. And so when you look at your business, think about how far along you are. Does your visual um, business reflect the same professionalism? And if not, how can you find those touch points that may be lacking and upgrade them so that it matches the level of time, effort, and intention that you've put into building your IP? So
Mm.
that's something that I think is really important to do the Canva graphics if that works for you. But if it starts weighing you down as a professional, that's going to
Yeah.
need an upgrade at some point.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. So, Sienna, which would you say is more important to design? And I ask this just in general, as well as in the digital space,
Okay.
creativity or strategy?
I think if I were just doing a blanket black and white answer, I would probably say strategy because if you are only creative, I think you're an artist. Um, Artists designed for
Mhm.
beauty and to be appreciated and to move people, but there isn't a business goal necessarily
Mhm.
at the end of those creative decisions. A word I love to use for our business is clever because it's
Mm.
strategic, but there's a creativity associated with it. So it's like strategy with like this creative band wound within it. So you have to be clever,
Okay.
you got to be witty. Like you got to think about strategically where you're going, how to stand out from the crowd as you're going there, and then at the same
Right.
time to hit your KPIs, hit your objectives and all that stuff and how creative can strategically play into your business to support all of those decisions. So at a firm decision, I would say strategy, but obviously creative strategy is how I
Yeah.
would treat that answer. But you can't, yeah, I don't think creative is worth hiring if you don't see any strategy involved. It's just like at that point, you might as well just hire an artist.
I get that. I get that. Yeah, I think, ideally it's nice to have both, but if not, or if you have to choose, I tend to think the strategy is what's most important too, because there are several moving parts. in terms of both design, brand
Mhm.
development. I mean, you have to kind of think ahead and really know your audience, and I mean all of that and more comes into play. So yeah, that that makes sense.
Yeah. And if you go back to the house analogy, it's like if you hired an architect and you gave them your vision and they created something that was really creative and beautiful, but it wasn't reflective of your vision, it wouldn't work
Hmm.
for you. It'd be like, uh, this just doesn't feel like me, or this isn't my family is not going to love this house. Same thing with like a
Right.
brand professional. If you're only creative, you can create a really cool brand based in nothing, and it won't do anything for you.
Hmm.
So that's where I think strategy comes into play. It's like you got to do a lot of the brand strategy work before you even embark on that creativity, and then finding the person who knows how to actually reflect the strategic decisions visually is a
Yeah.
tricky thing. But when you get it, my gosh, it's like a powerhouse. It's great.
Right. Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, one more question. Well, maybe two more. We'll see. Uh, but certainly one other question I have for you. You have worked with a number of clients, number of brands. I mean, from and you kind of touched on it earlier when in talking about the astronaut. But I mean, from astronauts to undercover FBI agents. Um, celebrity dog trainers, venture capitalists. I mean, and of course, you also mentioned working with speakers. You've
Mhm.
worked with best-selling authors. Again, I know you do have, this process or what have you, but can you just talk a bit more about how you are able to work with all those different types of clients? I'm thinking there's a common thread somewhere in there, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think my deep answer is just the human. Like that's the only thing that like combines
Mhm.
everyone is human. And so going back to my very first answer about when you approach things humbly, you can really see the human. And so I think, whether whoever it is on my screen, when you have those transparent conversations, it's like all of those titles and things on their resume is just like pulled apart and you just see the person behind all of the achievements. And so it's a real honor and treat to see the personality behind the Grammy Award winning songwriter or the astronaut or the FBI terrorist infiltrator, you know, turned speaker, like kind of thing. And just see like everyone has a heart, everyone has a purpose, and everyone has like this desire to impact people in some way. It's just everyone has a different desire and a different personality in how they're doing it. But seeing it when you can pull it out through brand work, visual brand work, yeah, it's a really beautiful thing. Really beautiful. So it's
Okay.
my
Okay.
cheating answer, I guess. The human brings us all together, but and the process is the same, but it looks
Yeah.
completely different depending on the person. That's why hopefully no one ever thinks I have a style because how could I when I have such different clients coming through? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense that it is really about the process. So you just confirmed that. So Sienna, how can people keep in touch with you? And before you say that, is there anything you want to share? Anything in particular you're working on or you're excited about? Anything coming up?
Oh, well, as I mentioned, I didn't even like touch on this at the beginning, but we're doing a rebrand kind of. We just expanded our services. So we're doing content marketing and we're also doing lead generation services. So the way that this
Okay.
kind of goes back to the strategy question, design is great, but design in action is better. And so we're trying to figure out bringing new purpose to triple threat, design, marketing, lead generation. So doing that extra piece where a lot of
Okay.
design stops, we're going to keep pushing it and try to actually generate leads for people who choose to do brand work with me. And, you don't have to do that if you don't want to, but so that's the newest thing going on with Mosaic Collective. So excited about it. And really excited to serve my clients so much better than I have in the past of just being like, here's your website, good luck. And now I'll be like, all right, here's your
Right.
website. Let's start pulling some leads
Right.
for you. so,
Yeah.
um, so that's the newness for us.
That kind of sounds like you're moving toward becoming kind of a one-stop
Yes.
shop where you can do design, you can help people generate leads. I mean, kind of take them through this whole process or business development process.
And word for word, that's what's on our material. Like, we're working on our material right now, because we have people on our team who do such different things. We have my husband, he's my business partner. He comes from the mergers and acquisition space. And so he knows all things
Mm-hmm.
finance, growing your business, scaling your business, and all of that. So we have him with that. He's got a ton of leads with ton of contacts with lead generation. I have another person we just pulled in as a managing director, and he has all this experience managing a marketing agency. And then my expertise is the creative decisions and the creative direction. And so we're just like this triple head leading these operations. And so I'm so excited to see how it's starting to all flesh out. So that should
Yeah.
probably launch in March or April. And so depending on when you listen to this podcast, check out the site and learn more about it.
All right. So speaking of that, can you share the website and any other way that people can stay connected with you?
Yes. You can find the best way to stay in contact with me is reaching out on mosaiccollective.com. Mosaic is MOZAIC-collective.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm friends with Rachel. So that's how you can find me.
All right. All right, cool. And we will include that in the show notes as well. And along with that information, you can find some amazing free resources that Swag Strategy Solutions offers. The brand adultery, yes, brand adultery video training. That is a thing. You can cheat on your brand. You want to know more about that, then grab that training. It is absolutely free, and there will be a couple of other resources there as well. So make sure you check that out. So Sienna, this has been awesome. I am sure that you guys listening and or seeing this have gotten some value. I think you've shared some amazing things, some amazing insight as well. So I certainly thank you for that. And those of you out there, make sure that you stay in touch and connect with Sienna. And of course, if you have not already done so, I invite you to subscribe to the Project Get Out Your Own Way podcast and write us a review. Reviews matter. And I like feedback, even if it's not stellar. I mean, I'm used to stellar feedback, but even if it's not, still want to hear from you. So make sure you write a review. Until next time, this has been Rachel Wilson Thibodeau along with Sienna Roman. Take care and take some action.